Good afternoon, everyone, and I'll do my best now to set the timer so I keep on time. So 15:15. Thank you. So these are just a few ideas, really wanting to try to take forward some of the lessons we learned from the sort of blended learning approach. They were just my ideas, based on really, how do we sort of take the best from the pandemic, and what's transferable now we're going back online. So, now we go back in person. Goodness. So right at the end of last term, I circulated a continuing improvement questionnaire. It was circulated in my weekly newsletter. I've kept a newsletter going now for about 11 years, writing each week to students with what's happening and so forth. So I embedded the questionnaire in that, and got some interesting remarks back, some good feedback. And what did strike me as odd was that, having come along to one or two more of these seminars, the assessment, the criteria that I was judging success by, i.e. the NSS feedback, wasn't necessarily the feedback that is you can see here with the principles of good learning and assessment. So being accessible, and pleasingly there was early comments on accessibility, being engaging and so forth. And so I thought, well, what can I do? Can I build on these? Can this be my blueprint for the year? So I took the responses. I sort of saw where we were high, we were low, and I sort of thought, well, this is really the basis on which I can build a plan. So in fairness, the survey wasn't ever so well responded to, but at least I can say that I've taken a poll and I've tried to do my best. So in essence, these separate into things that were good, things like just simple things like putting the important points in red, things like the revision sessions and the like. Areas to work on were more VVOX, more interactive stuff, and things to generate comment and focus. That was the common theme throughout. Thanks, Helen. I'll take that feedback on board. Thank you. So it was now a case of you've fed this information forward to me. How can I now embed this in? So throughout summer, I went through all of my materials again. I made some additions, made some interactive content, made sure that all the slides were accessible, and put some trigger warnings in. Some of the topics we teach are not everyone's cup of tea, so I put some trigger warnings in when they appear. Actually, a trigger warning with an audible alert as well. So I put some hyperlinks into topics that are areas that I sort of thought could do with a little bit more explanation. And importantly, at the end, I developed this idea about generating feedback. How can I generate more feedback? How can I generate it more frequently, rather than wait to the end of the module when, of course, everything's finished? So it was a way of me taking these ideas forward. We started off with the interactive comments, so some pre-reading materials, to make that and make these sessions more interactive. So getting going now with interactive polling, which simple idea, but it really is doing well. I'm getting some good feedback from students. This is right at the end of the lectures. So each lecture block has this slide in it. You'll see that I prefer QR codes because because you can actually access them while they're on screen. And the idea is, which is proving very successful, the students will scan this code on the device, and they can then access an MS form. I'll explain that in a bit more detail in a moment. So this came from the write-ups I used to do when we were doing this stuff online, and we were using Teams, and because we were restricted to 1 hour and 1 hour only. I would say to students, look, we don't have a chance to access all the interaction we could have, but if you put things into the chat, I'll respond to them. So each week I would download the chat and put together what I referred to at the time was a module digest. So simply we have a pre-read as that came forward from the blended era, and sort of trying to take forward, but actually taking this forward now in a way that using QR codes actually enables the students to link to these materials actually whilst they're in class, even using QR codes to actually link back to other materials, using this to actually embed some pre-learning. As always, there's concluding work, but once again, taking this from a hyperlink or a URL in the slide, actually putting it as a QR code enables people to access it in real time. So signposting to other topics has been a key theme taking forward. So I really sort of focused then on feedback, and thought, well, feedback as is. These are just my experiences. It's been poorly engaged with 3 or 4. Of course, then not overly representative, skewed by 1 or 2 who have a particular voice to make. And of course, having been a production engineer in the dim and distant past, it gives you no opportunity to change things. And for example, this is the early days. We're about 3 weeks into teaching now, but my first session where I give we have feedback within the module as well. We have feedback within the lecture. And one student told me that she was hard of hearing and she wasn't able to hear me. We were able to sort of fix that there and then. Now that could have gone on, that could have rumbled on to the end of the term, and we'd have let that student down. I'm hoping you can see this. It's not been appearing very well on my screen, but it's the loop that I'm now using to embed the QR code, which then takes you to an MS form, so an online Microsoft form, which opens up into a document. The students then fill this form in. You'll see in a moment, it takes literally seconds to fill the form in, and it's really taking those ideas from the chat feedback in the Teams, and now getting them on an MS form each week. So I just asked them 3 questions. How's it going? Any things I could explain a little bit better, any more support they need. And I'm not quite sure why it's not, the slide's not appearing as it should be on my screen. So that's an example, and you'll see we've gone from the 2 or 3 people who would normally feedback to this. This is just one module over about 3 weeks now. So you can see there that we've got a good level of participation with the QR code linked to the form, which then I follow up on at the end of the lecture. It's very quick to respond to, and it opens into Excel, so it's very easy to analyze, and it gives me some real-time grading. In more detail, you can dig down into the detail. So this has got 192 responses, so you can see the breadth of feedback and what students have thought about that particular lecture. So you can see that it does this, the range of satisfaction in real time. You can access these things can be displayed as word clouds or Excel in Excel format. The QR code really has been a real bonus because it does allow the students to access these things literally in real time. So we actually do this before the students actually go out of the room. So They tell me that the topics they've liked. There's good level of participation. It can be visualised as a word cloud, and what were the highlights and what were the lowlights of the lectures. So once again, good participation, taking it from where we were before, 2 or 3 feeding back at the end of the whole end of the process, that end of the module evaluation. So feedback from that first 194. This is very much a work in progress. They said I was a little bit too quick, highlighted and rectified, I hope, a little too quiet, amended, and once again, that student who had a hearing difficulty, it just struck me that that I could have left that right to the end of the module, leaving this poor student literally not being able to hear things. So VVox is our way of using interactive polling, so interactive polling software, very simply established, and it works. The students like it. They like the interactive Q&A. And this is some of their feedback. They like how I now respond quickly to their comments, because by the time I've walked back to my office from the lecture theatre, I've actually got a document that they've filled in, which I then just add some details to, some other hyperlinks, some library resources, that type of thing. I share this with them in a feedback folder. So I put a feedback folder on Moodle on our teaching platform. So put their feedback in that each week, feeding back on what they've fed back to me. So really bringing feedback alive. There's some mention about Padlet, and we really promoted the library resources, and we now have our own Padlet. But once again, introducing the librarian to lectures, and really what they can get out of their library. This really span out of the diversity mark stuff we were doing at the same time. This is what I was saying about the feedback as we go. This is about sort of slide 15 in each lecture, and it opens up into an interactive poll where people vote whether it's too slow, too quick, and so forth. And so I think we'd be taking feedback really as close to the coalface as we possibly can. So it really has gone down a storm. These very simple ideas. So in summary, it's a work in progress. It's not put forward as a solution for everyone. There's actually found that there's no more magic solution, and lots of what's been spoken about already in the early comments. We're also experimenting with Padlet and so forth, and interestingly, going through everything to make sure it's fully accessible. And I will take those comments on that red is not particularly a good colour for highlighting things. But it does seem to be well received at the moment. It's getting seemingly good reviews, and I think it will be a good idea, something we can take forward. So thank you for listening to me. And as always, there's a link to the presentation in the QR code, as students would actually see it on online, so they could actually capture the lecture there and then. So I think I'm about on time, John. I've rattled through that, if that's okay.
Absolutely great. Yeah, thank you, Robert. I think everyone can see. Yeah, this is great, and as you say, it's a simple idea, but really well presented and really well used. I think people can immediately see, in case you didn't notice this, how receptive you are to feedback, because you took feedback during the session on the session itself,
yes.
And that shows exactly how this works. Did you have to change your attitude at all towards getting feedback, or have you always had that attitude and just not been able to get the feedback?
We've always been accessible. I would have liked to think I was always accessible and amenable to comment, but letting it, when the students go out to the lecture theatre, and then you ask them at the end of the process, or even at that midpoint, for the midterm evaluation, it's like any survey, you get very little back, whereas actually scanning this in the lecture theatre. In fact, I've even taken it one stage further, John. There's a way of setting forms up where you can actually get an email alert for each vote you get, which of course pings on my Apple Watch. So literally, as I'm walking back to my office, I can see the forms coming into the inbox.
Brilliant, so, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. We're at time there, so I'll cut you short. If you don't mind stopping sharing, you can hide your camera. You can leave us if you want to. There's more feedback in the chat. If you would like to read it, please do. And we'll have a response to some of those questions about Vevox if I can find the info as that's buzzing in.